Being here today is big for me, not just because this is TEDx, obviously, not just because I get to share something with you all that's really important to me, but because historically standing up here and talking is something that my mind has kept me away from for a very long time. I've made whole career decisions based on not having to do this, let me tell you. But I used to live my life in a very different way to how I live it now. I used to let my fears define who I am. And now I use what I have learned to guide myself and my clients towards a different way of living. One of connecting in to the power of your fear rather than doing everything you can to keep yourself away from it. So I'm a cognitive hypnotherapist and a coach, and it's my passion to help people to connect into the power of who they can be when they really believe in themselves. So we all have fears to some extent or another. I'm sure all of you can identify things that you're afraid of in your life. And often we perceive that some of those fears are okay to share, and some are not. And we tend to build barriers around the things that we perceive are not okay, the things that we're afraid of. And it's a place that often we feel very disconnected from the world. We try and hide bits of ourselves from the world. So, sorry, I thought I was going to be able to see my slides down here, and I can't see the next slide, so I'm going to jump forward every now and again. But now, I would say that there are different levels of fears. We have top-level fears, and then we have what I would call deep structure fears. So top-level fears are things that often we feel is okay to share with the world. You know, people will identify that they're afraid of heights, that they're afraid of public speaking, that they're maybe afraid of spiders. Loads of people are afraid of random things like buttons. Apparently, did you know that Steve Jobs apparently was so afraid of buttons, according to the internet, who knows if it's actually true, that he invented the iPhone and the iPad, right? So don't get rid of all of your fears, because some of them might be your genius. So the interesting thing about these types of fears are that we often perceive that they're okay to share. You know, I've actually spoken to a number of people about what I was going to be talking about, and we've kind of joked about, yeah, you know, terrified of public speaking, really scared of spiders. We kind of feel like we can connect with other people about these things. However, if you got 100 people in a room, probably there would only be a few people that you were around that would share that exact same fear that you do. Underneath all of these things, we have what I call the deep structure fears. These are things like feeling unloved and unlovable, fear of failure, the things that underpin some of those top-level fears. And these are the places that we tend to feel that sense of disconnection and isolation. They're the things that we tend to do things to stop other people noticing that we experience these things. We become master builders, basically. We build big walls around those things. These things here are the reasons that, say, the powerful CEO is unable to lead powerfully because they're being undermined by these things. They're the reasons that people don't have the relationships that they would like to have. They're the reasons people aren't earning to their full potential. It's the reason that often people are feeling unhappy or depressed. But the irony of this is that it's in these places that we're the most connected to each and every person that we come into contact with. If you got those same 100 people in a room, every single person would be experiencing these deep structure fears. So let me tell you a little bit about how this worked out in my life. Because for a long time, I let these things define me. And I really seriously underachieved as a result. On paper, it kind of looked okay. Like when my biog was being read out, I thought, oh, that sounds okay, right? But so I left school when I was 16. I just started my A-levels and then I quit because I thought I was too stupid to do A-levels. My thing was not being good enough. I thought I was not good enough, and I really lived to that limiting belief. So I kind of flailed around in the world for a little bit, trying to work out who I was and what I was going to do. And I got the idea of applying to drama school. My father worked in theatre. It was something I kind of knew. Let's give it a go. Got into the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art and trained as a stage manager. Now, what I don't want you to know about me, and what I haven't even admitted to myself until very recently, is actually I really wanted to be an actor, but I was way too afraid to go there. So then stage management wasn't for me, obviously. So I went, again, spent some time wondering what I was going to do, and I ended up doing an arts management degree, right? So I'll prove to myself that I do have a brain somehow, even though I'm not good enough, obviously. And I kind of did okay at that. It gave me some confidence. And the trouble with that was I had to give presentations. And I literally thought I was going to pass out and die. Literally, every time I had to give a presentation, it would take me 2 weeks of preparation to speak to. We're talking like 6, 7 people that I had to talk to here. So then I got on a training course at the BBC in London, and basically what I was doing is I was getting some of the best training around at some of the top institutions in the country, it turned out, to dodge my fear of being in life. So wind it on a little bit. I had 2 children, and I stayed at home to look after them. It's amazing how having 2 10-pound babies without pain relief really connects you into the power of who you can be. Guys, you'll have to find another way to do that. But what happened was I began to connect into myself and really to slow down. And the news flash was that I was okay. Who'd have thought it? I stopped trying to be in the world, and I just was. And it made such a huge difference to me. So then I started thinking about, how else I could be in the world. Things were really shifting. I'd done something that was very scary to me, giving birth, and I was okay. And gently I started to lean in towards my fears from that time, instead of doing everything I could to keep myself away from them. And so I looked around for how else I could be, what else I could do in the world, how I could utilize that connection. And very quickly I came across cognitive hypnotherapy and Trevor and Rebecca Sylvester at the Quest Institute. And let me tell you, this changed everything for me. It led to another course, which wasn't ideal, but it did change everything. Here's some of the things that I learned in that time that so deeply served me and now also serves my clients very powerfully too. The first is that your unconscious mind controls around 90% of what you do. We can feel like we're consciously in control of what's happening, of what we're doing, but if you're trying to achieve something that goes against what your unconscious mind has going for you, then it's an uphill struggle. That figure was horrifying to me, but it really explained a lot about where I was at. The next thing is how we experience the world is entirely down to the way we think about it. So you and I could stand shoulder to shoulder and have the exact same experience and take 2 completely different meanings from it based on our past experience and what we then project on forward into our expected outcome into the future. We make it all up, basically. The final one was that as we learn new thought patterns and behaviors, new neural pathways are created in our minds. Our brains literally change shape as we learn new habits. Nothing has to be the way it's always been. Nothing has to be fixed. We can literally change our minds. So, sorry, that's coming. You're having fun, right? So fear is designed to keep us out of the way of things that will endanger our lives. It's very important, we need it. But consciously, we know the things that we need to be afraid of. You know, I think we can be pretty sure that consciously we know if there's a falling rock, we need to be careful. If there's a fast-moving traffic, we need to be really careful of that. Saber-toothed tigers, you know, we need to get out of the way. Anything else, we really don't need to take that seriously. And people spend an inordinate amount of time fearing the worst in their life, effectively. As a wonderful client of mine once said to me, she said, "Kirsty, it's like I've been the grim reaper of my own life." The good news is that fear and limiting beliefs are just thoughts. They're just thoughts. And here's some food for thought about thought that makes all this better. The first one, we don't have to believe our thinking. I often say to my clients, just write up the word really with a question mark and stick it on your fridge. Just ask yourself, really? That thing I've been thinking for all that time, is that true? Like, I can't do it? Really? The next one, a thought is not an instruction. How many times, I'm guessing all the time, because I do it too, have you had a thought and just gone ahead and acted on it without even pausing? Most of us treat our thinking almost like it's an army officer calling us to attention. But the good news is that you can break rank of your thinking. You get to choose. And finally, this is a really great one that my 6- and 7-year-old children were talking about how to pronounce their th and f sounds. And my son came up with this philosophical gem. A thought is not a fort. Think about that. We can break out of that fixed mindset that we have for ourselves and create a flexible way of being. We don't have to stay in that fixed place. We can break rank to our thinking. Oh, the clicker's not working. So, my fear of public speaking started around about when I was 6 years old. And I had the very prestigious role of being the last S in Christmas Angel in the school play. And the teacher was selecting us all to go, you know, sort of ushering us onto the stage, and she picked me to go on as the first S in Christmas to spell the word Christmas. And I had absolutely no idea where to stand. And everybody laughed, probably at the cute little thing in the tinsel. And my young mind took that as looking stupid. So events like this can be a starting point for bigger problems later on, as when we're experiencing a significant emotional event, our unconscious minds often take a snapshot of what else is going on around us and seal it together so that we then project forward a negative outcome in the future. So every time I tried to stand up and talk, and actually asking a question in a meeting became an issue for me, my mind was kicking in to this projected outcome of the deep level beliefs of standing and talking or speaking at all equals looking stupid, not being good enough, not accepted. That's what was firing off as the fight or flight response, that huge hit of adrenaline every time I tried to do that. So my big, deep structure fears were fired off enormously. And my big learning came from a little while ago when my marriage broke up. I was coming home from work one night, and the next day I was due to leave my marital home with my children, become a single mum, and the place that I was buying looked like it was falling through, so I wasn't hugely aware of what was happening in the future. And I was more fearful than I've ever been about anything in my life. And I was coming home from work that evening. It was dark, it was a September evening, and the rain was pouring down. I was listening to my headphones as I was experiencing this enormous surge of fear. I think something fittingly miserable was playing in the background. And I mean, it was the worst thing that I had experienced. I can't ever imagine another time that it was so bad. I could hardly breathe. I was so terrified. And something came to my head, which was, how can you change the energy of this situation? What can you do so that this projected outcome that your mind is going ahead to doesn't have to be this tragic thing that you feel it to be right now? So I carried on walking past my front door and onto a field at the bottom of my road. And the rain was really coming down now. I stood in this field in the dark. And you know how sometimes the right song comes on? And Rain King by Counting Crows started playing. As I was standing there, I was still, I was literally vibrating with fear and panic. And in that moment, I took off my shoes and I stepped onto the wet, muddy grass and I listened to the music and I just stretched out my arms. And I just thought, I'm going to let my fear and the rain hit me. I stopped running from it and I just let it cover me. And do you know what happened? I was absolutely fine. In that moment, I knew 100% that no matter what we feel, what we fear, what we experience, or what our thinking tells us, we always have exactly what we need. In that moment, I changed on a cellular level. Something shifted in me so deeply because I know we don't have to fear anything. And nothing has ever looked the same to me since that moment. And then in the next second, I thought, is it possible to get electrocuted while you're listening to your music in the rain? But that insight stuck. So this is about leaning in towards your fears. It's about connecting in to who you can be if you refuse to let your fears define who you are. I'd like just to invite you to consider, who would you be if you let go of that story that you tell yourself? If you let go of those fears? Maybe just take a moment just to close your eyes and just to connect in with yourself. Just take a few deep breaths and just consider this for your life. Who would you be if you believed in yourself more than you do now? What would you be creating in your world? Who would you be surrounding yourself with who could inspire you? What would you be asking for? And just bring that intention back into the room with you now as you just open your eyes and just consider this quote. It's not meant to be easy, just possible. And I'd really like to invite you to consider that so much more is possible in your life than you consider it to be right now. Thank you.